All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Looks like we're going deep on AI today, specifically the ethical side of these deep research agents everyone's talking about.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving field for
Sure.
sure. Raises a lot of questions.
For sure. So we've got two main sources to dig into here. One's a super technical breakdown, compares OpenAI's deep research system to the open source AGI framework. That's AGI, like artificial general intelligence. And our other source, it's a whole research proposal focused on how we keep these AI systems aligned with, well, our goals, our values as they keep getting smarter.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, we're really aiming to understand how these systems work, what they can do, the good and the bad.
Exactly. I mean, having an AI write research papers is one thing, but making sure it's writing the right kind of paper, so to speak, that's key.
Exactly. And that leads to some big questions, right? Can AI really come up with totally new research ideas? And if so, how do we prevent those from being, well, harmful or unethical?
And even more basic, like if an AI is doing the research, who gets credit? The AI, the people who made it, the researchers using it, stuff we got to think about.
Absolutely. So let's start with the deep research system and the AGI framework. Both are pushing what AI can do in research, but they go about it differently.
Okay, let's start with OpenAI's deep research system. Sounds like a super-powered research assistant. What can it actually do?
Imagine an AI that can independently browse the internet, gather info from millions of sources, then put it all together to answer complex questions or even, like, solve problems.
So like a whole team of grad students working 24/7 all in one AI.
Great analogy. And it's not just the speed, it's the depth. This system can follow chains of thought, exploring different research avenues, using tools like code execution sandboxes to actually test out ideas.
Wait, hold on. Code execution sandboxes? That's, I don't know, a little risky.
Well, that's where it gets interesting. OpenAI knows the risks. They've built in a ton of safety measures. These sandboxes, they're like virtual environments the AI can experiment without causing any real-world harm.
Okay, makes sense. But are sandboxes enough to contain a super smart AI? What if it figures out how to, like, break out? Keeps me up at night.
Valid concerns, and I think it's important to remember, even with the best safeguards, there's always some risk. That's why OpenAI uses this preparedness framework to evaluate the potential risks.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me about this preparedness framework.
So it basically assesses risk in four key areas. Cybersecurity, so could it be used to hack systems? CBRN, that's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, dangerous stuff. Then there's persuasion, could it be used to manipulate people? And finally, model autonomy, meaning can we keep the AI from getting too independent, making up its own goals, basically.
Wow, that's quite a list. So how'd the deep research system do on this assessment?
Even with all the precautions, OpenAI rated it medium risk overall. Actually, it got medium in all four of those categories.
Medium risk.
hmm
That's a little unsettling. Sounds like making safe AI is way more complex than we might realize.
Definitely suggests it's ongoing, constant vigilance, adaptation, and that's where the open source AGI framework comes in. It's a different approach. Emphasis on flexibility in community.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this AGI framework. How's it different from the deep research system?
Well, think of deep research system as a high-end car, powerful, sleek, but controlled. The AGI framework is more like a set of high-tech building blocks.
So it's not a complete AI on its own.
Right, more like a platform, an operating system to build custom AGI systems. Pick which AI models, how to connect them, what safeguards to use.
Incredibly flexible, but also potentially very risky. If anyone can build their own AGI, how do we stop someone from making something dangerous?
Crucial question. Gets to the heart of open source versus closed AI development. The AGI framework puts a lot of responsibility on the developers themselves to build ethically and safely.
It's like buying a pre-assembled toy versus a box full of parts and instructions. Pre-assembled, you trust the company got it right. Box of parts, more control, but more responsibility to put it together right.
Perfect analogy. Highlights the trade-offs. Open source AI, more innovation, collaboration, but also more potential for misuse.
So how do we find that balance? Ensure the AGI framework is used for good.
That's where the research proposal comes in. Lays out a framework for ethical AI development, specifically for the AGI framework.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that. What are some of the key ideas in this proposal?
Well, one main theme is human oversight. We got to keep humans involved at every stage, development and deployment.
So even though these AIs are designed to be autonomous, we can't just set them loose.
Exactly. We need ways to monitor their behavior, spot problems early, and step in if we have to.
Makes sense. What other safeguards are being proposed?
Well, the proposal talks a lot about transparency, how these systems are built, how they make decisions. The idea being, if we can understand how the AI works, we're more likely to trust it and use it responsibly.
So no more black boxes. Got to be able to look under the hood and see what's up.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the tech itself. Being transparent about the data used to train them, the assumptions being made, the potential biases that might exist.
That's really interesting. So it's not just the AI being transparent, it's the whole process.
Precisely. And that level of transparency is key for trust and accountability.
This is all super thought-provoking. Feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, it is a fascinating and challenging area, for sure. We're just starting to understand what it means to have AI in research.
Okay, before we go too far down the rabbit hole, let's take a closer look at that research proposal. What are some of the specific recommendations to ensure the AGI framework is used ethically?
Well, let's delve into that in the next segment. Lays out a roadmap for this new frontier of AI research. Lots of intriguing ideas to explore.
Okay, so we've kind of set the stage, explored these two powerful AI systems for research, OpenAI's deep research system, and the open source AGI framework. Now, let's really dig into that research proposal you mentioned. It's supposed to be like a guidebook for ethical AI development, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really specific, which I like, goes beyond just be careful and gives actual things developers working with the AGI framework can do.
But that's what I'm talking about. Give me the practical stuff. So where does it start?
Well, remember how both our sources emphasize human oversight? This proposal really hammers that home because the AGI framework is so flexible. It's like a set of building blocks, so there's a lot of responsibility on the people putting it together.
Right, it's not a finished product, so you can't just assume safety's built in. You've got all these powerful components, and it's up to the developer to use them wisely.
Exactly. So the proposal suggests designing systems where certain actions just can't happen without a human giving the okay.
So like if the AI wants to run some code it found online or send an email to a journal, there's a forced stop and check built in. Seems like a good starting point.
Exactly. And it's not just a vague idea. The AGI framework's documentation already mentions a user output module that could handle this. It manages anything going out from the AI and could be programmed to, like, route certain actions to a human for approval.
Ah, so it's already kind of built in a way, but it's up to the developers to actually use it.
Right. And the proposal also suggests any research findings the AI makes should be looked over by a human before they're shared publicly.
So like a peer review process, but for AI-generated research. Good way to catch errors, but also to make sure it meets our standards for quality, rigor.
Absolutely. It's about ensuring the research is scientifically sound, but also ethically sound.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What else does the proposal recommend?
Well, another big area is technical safeguards and constraints. We talked about sandboxes earlier, but the proposal goes deeper into how to use those effectively.
Right, sandboxes are those virtual environments where the AI can experiment without breaking anything, like giving a toddler a safe space to play without wrecking the good china.
Exactly. But the proposal goes beyond just sandboxes. It talks about things like content filters and refusal policies. Remember how OpenAI trained their deep research system to refuse malicious instructions?
Oh, right, like those prompt injection attempts where someone tries to trick the AI by sneaking in a bad command disguised as something innocent.
Exactly. The proposal says developers working with the AGI framework need to build in those same kinds of safeguards. Programmatically prevent the AI from acting on certain content or instructions, even if they're cleverly disguised.
So like building a moral compass for the AI.
That's a good way to put it. It's about teaching the AI right from wrong and giving it the ability to say no to anything that crosses the line. But of course, that raises the question of whose morals we're talking about.
Right. Whose values are we embedding in these systems? How do we make sure those values align with what's good for society as a whole?
Those are the big questions, and there aren't easy answers. But AI systems are made by humans, so they reflect our values and biases.
So we need to be really careful about those biases. Make sure we're not accidentally creating AI that makes existing inequalities even worse.
Absolutely. And that leads to another recommendation: continuous evaluation and red teaming.
Ah, yes, the red team, the folks who try to break things, right?
Exactly. It's common in cybersecurity, having a team that tries to find vulnerabilities and exploit them. The proposal says we need to do the same thing with AI systems.
So you've got ethical hackers trying to trick the AI into doing something bad or unethical.
Exactly. And it's not a one-time thing. It needs to be ongoing. As AIs get smarter, people will find new ways to try and exploit them.
So it's like a constant game of cat and mouse.
Kinda, yeah. But a game we need to play if we want safe and responsible AI. And those logs we talked about where the AI's actions are recorded, those would be really helpful here.
Oh, right, the logs. I can see how those would be valuable for debugging. But also for spotting patterns that might indicate a problem. Like you could see if someone's trying to trick the AI or if
Yeah,
it's starting to act in ways it wasn't supposed to.
exactly. Those logs are like breadcrumbs, helping us understand the AI's decisions and catch potential problems early.
Okay, so we've got human oversight, technical safeguards, continuous evaluation. What else does this proposal recommend?
Another important one is bias mitigation. We touched on it earlier, but the proposal gets specific about how to address it with the AGI framework.
Okay, I'm all ears. What can developers do to actually minimize bias in their AI systems?
One key recommendation is pre-integration testing. Basically, before you even put a new AI model or data set into your system, you run it through a bunch of tests to look for potential biases.
So like a bias check before you let the AI out in the wild.
Exactly. And there are tools for this, like stereotype tests and fairness metrics. They can tell you if the AI is more likely to make certain decisions for certain groups of people, even if those decisions are unfair or discriminatory.
And if those tests show bias, what then?
Then you got to mitigate it. Might mean retraining the model with better data, adjusting the algorithms to be more fair, or even choosing a different AI model altogether.
So it's not a simple fix, could mean big changes to how the AI system is designed.
Right. And it's not just a one-time thing. The proposal recommends ongoing bias audits to make sure the system isn't developing new biases over time.
Sounds like a really comprehensive approach to bias in AI, not just reacting to problems, but building in safeguards from the start and constantly checking for potential issues.
You got it. And that brings us to another part of bias mitigation, monitoring the diversity of the AI's output.
Yeah. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that entail?
Let's say you're using AI to come up with research ideas. You want to make sure it's not giving you the same old ideas or ideas that are only relevant to a small group of people. You want it to be creative, explore lots of different possibilities.
So it's not just about being unbiased, it's about being original, thinking outside the box.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really cool because it blurs the lines between what we consider creative and what AI can do.
That's fascinating. But how do you encourage an AI to be more creative, diverse? Is that even possible?
That's a question researchers are still working on, but there are some promising techniques. One is to use multiple AI models, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Like having a team of AIs brainstorming, each with a different perspective.
Exactly. And another approach is to experiment with different prompting techniques. How you phrase your questions or instructions to the AI can really change the kinds of responses you get.
So it's like being a good interviewer, gotta ask the right questions to get good answers.
That's a great way to put it. It's about guiding the AI's creativity without stifling its ability to think outside the box.
This is all so mind-blowing. Feels like we're on the edge of something huge. AI playing a bigger and bigger role in research and innovation.
I agree. But like any powerful technology, there are risks as well as benefits. That's why this conversation about ethical AI development is so important. We got to think about these issues now, before it's too late to change course.
Well said. It's exciting, it's full of opportunity, but it's also a huge responsibility. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about that responsibility. What can developers actually do to make sure their AI systems are ethical?
Let's get into that next. The research proposal offers some really concrete advice.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The potential, the concerns, specific systems like OpenAI's and the AGI framework even peeked into a proposal for making AI development ethical. But I feel like we're at that rubber meets the road moment. What can developers actually do to ensure their AI aligns with all this?
Where the practical rubber meets the ethical road, you could say.
Yeah.
And the proposal, thankfully, gets very specific on this, not just ideals, but how to turn them into actions. One big point it makes is the need for like a multi-layered approach to safety and ethics.
Okay, you've said multi-layered a few times now. Like ethical AI needs a good lasagna, lots of layers to get it right.
That's one way to put it. It's not enough to rely on just one safeguard, one principle. We need to combine approaches, make the system robust, resilient, like building a house, right?
Yeah.
We need the foundation, but also strong walls, a roof, good locks.
So defense in depth strategy, but for ethical AI. I like it. But what are some of those layers specifically?
Well, it starts way back at the design stage, developing the AI systems themselves. Like we talked about, bias mitigation, transparency, human oversight, all that early on.
Right, making sure bias isn't baked in from the start, understanding the AI's decisions, having a human who can step in if things go sideways. Those all make sense, but what comes after that?
The proposal argues it's not just the tech, but the whole process around its use, creating an ethical infrastructure, so to speak.
Okay, so like ethical review boards, frameworks for managing data, maybe even legal guidelines for how AI can and can't be used in research, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Got to ensure AI is developed and deployed in a way that matches our values,
Yeah.
with mechanisms for accountability, oversight, the whole nine yards.
Yeah. So it's not enough to just trust individual developers to do the right thing. Got to have a system that encourages, even enforces, ethical behavior.
Precisely. Building a culture of responsibility around AI.
I like that, a culture of responsibility. But let's get even more nitty-gritty. What can developers do right now? Best practices.
One that's often overlooked is data governance. Easy to get caught up in the fancy algorithms, but AI is only as good as the data it learns from.
Garbage in, garbage out, right.
Exactly. So, huge thing is making sure that training data is high quality, representative, unbiased.
Sounds good, but how do we actually do that?
Starts with clear data governance policies, covering everything. How it's collected, stored, who can access it, under what conditions.
So like checks and balances for data, transparency and accountability the whole way.
Yep. And it's not just preventing misuse. It's making sure the data is representative of the people the AI is supposed to be serving.
Can you give an example of how that plays out in the real world?
Sure, imagine an AI analyzing medical images, helping doctors diagnose. If its training data is only from people of one race, ethnicity, it might not be as accurate for others.
Ah, I see. So you could end up with AI that makes healthcare disparities worse because it wasn't trained on diverse enough data. That's scary.
It is. Underscores the need for careful data work, curation, validation. Can't just trust any data set. Got to evaluate it, understand its limits, address potential bias.
Okay, so data governance, huge. What else should developers be thinking about?
Another big one is model transparency and explainability. We touched on it, but it's key during the implementation phase too.
Right. It's one thing to say AI should be transparent, another to actually build systems humans can understand, especially non-experts.
Exactly. And there are a few ways to do this. One is using AI models that are just inherently easier to interpret.
So simpler models, maybe not as powerful, but easier for humans to grasp.
Exactly. Like choosing a manual car over an automatic. Manual's harder to learn, but you know exactly how it works under the hood.
I like that. Sometimes a little less power is worth it for the sake of transparency.
Right. But even with complex models, there are ways to make them more transparent, like explainability tools that give insights into how the model's making decisions.
Oh, that's cool. So giving the AI a way to explain itself to us.
Exactly. These tools can make visualizations, summaries, even natural language explanations, so we can understand the AI's thought process, which is crucial for trust, accountability.
Makes sense if people don't get how an AI decides things, they won't trust it.
Exactly. Like blindly following a GPS versus understanding the route and why it chose it.
Great analogy. Highlights how we need to make AI user-friendly, even for non-tech folks.
Couldn't agree more. Gotta demystify AI, empower people to understand it. But transparency is just one part. Human oversight and control is crucial too.
Right, that keeps coming up, keeping humans in the loop. But what does that look like in a practical sense?
One principle is having human review for any high-stakes decisions the AI makes.
So like if the AI is recommending medical treatment or deciding on a loan application, a human always gets the final say.
Exactly. And not just reviewing after the fact. Design AI systems with off switches or kill switches so humans can intervene if the AI starts doing things we didn't intend.
Like an emergency brake for AI, might never need it, but good to have it.
Precisely. AI, no matter how advanced, is still a tool. We got to use it responsibly with safeguards in place.
Okay, so data governance, transparency, human oversight. What else is essential for ethical AI when we're actually putting it into practice?
Last one I want to highlight is ongoing monitoring and evaluation. Can't just build an ethical system, call it a day. Got to make sure it stays ethical as the AI learns, as the world changes.
So like continuous quality improvement, but for AI.
Exactly. And it's got a few parts. Data monitoring, making sure the data is still good, accurate, unbiased. Model auditing, checking the AI itself, making sure it's performing as expected. No weird behaviors, biases popping up. And finally, getting user feedback so people using the AI can flag any issues.
So keep an eye on the data, the model, and listen to the users.
Exactly. All that info feeds back into making the AI better, retraining it, tweaking the algorithms, even changing how it's designed or used. Constant cycle of learning, adapting, improving.
Sounds like a lot of work, but guess that's the cost of doing AI, right?
I think it's worth it, and we're not alone in this. We have to collaborate, share what we learn to make sure AI is used for good.
Right, no one have all the answers, got to work together for a better future with AI.
Absolutely. Share best practices, learn from mistakes, support each other as we figure out this whole complex, ever-changing AI landscape.
This has been an amazing deep dive, really fascinating, the potential, the challenges, a lot to think about as AI becomes more and more a part of our world.
I agree, and we need to approach it with optimism, but also caution. We can do amazing things, but we have to be responsible, aware of the risks.
So be bold, but be humble.
Exactly. Bold in our vision, but humble in how we go about it. And remember, AI is a tool for us, not the other way around.
Kind of said it better myself. And on that note, one final thought to leave you with. As you explore the world of AI, ask yourself, how do we make sure it stays a force for good? A tool that empowers us, helps us build a better future for everyone. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.